Hi, good afternoon. My name is
Hello.
Tracy Johnston, and I'm with Next Step Transition Center, as well as the founder of a nonprofit called Skills, Transitioning, and Employment Pathways to Success. With my two companies, I am also an HCS and Texas Home Living provider for Next Step Transition Center. And for STEPS, we provide job coaching and training for individuals with special needs to get competitive employment.
Tracy, thank you for having us here today. We're certainly glad to be here, and we're thankful for the folks that have joined us today. We're excited about what you guys are doing at Next Steps, and the services and support that you're bringing to the community is super important, and we're thankful for what you guys are doing. So today we're talking about another topic. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Yes, okay. So we're going to be talking about ABLE accounts today, and by virtue of talking about ABLE accounts today, we will be talking about some other matters kind of in and around ABLE accounts that matter. I'm Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic financial planning firm, and we predominantly work with special needs families on special needs planning, future care planning, and retirement planning alike, because kind of it all goes in one and the same when it comes to things like that. So we're happy you're here today, and we hope you take a lot out of this. Tracy is going to be monitoring the chat box today for us. So as we're going through this presentation, if you have questions, just please put them in your chat box, and then we will do our very best to answer those questions. And if there's any questions that we can't answer, then we will certainly get back to you on those as well. So thanks. Okay, so today we're talking about accounts. Again, 529A. A is for ABLE. 529 is something that we've heard many times before under the tax code for 529C for college. So ABLE Act in 2014, and it gave us an ability to have an account similar to a 529 for college, only for individuals with disabilities. Okay, what you can use the money for in an ABLE account is pretty broad, and so for when it comes to the expenses that a special needs individual may have. So how it works is the beneficiary is the account owner, and the income earned in the account is not taxable, but the contributions are also not deductible. Okay. The key to the ABLE account and why a person might want an ABLE account is that it does not jeopardize SSI. Okay. So some of you on this meeting today, your children may not be getting SSI yet. They may be under age 18. Maybe they don't qualify at this point for SSI because if they're a minor, it's based off of your assets. So if your assets are over the threshold, which is $3,000 if you're married and $2,000 if you're single, then your child doesn't qualify for SSI yet. Once they turn 18, their qualifications for SSI are based off of being disabled in the eyes of the Social Security Administration, and it's based off of their assets at age 18. It's no longer yours. So even if the child still lives with you, once they're 18, they still live with you, even though you still claim them on your tax return. It's still based off of their assets and not yours. Okay. So it also does not jeopardize Medicaid or other public benefits. But there are special contributions and distribution limits that we have to pay attention to when it comes to these ABLE accounts. Okay, so getting down a little bit further on who can have an ABLE account. Not every disabled person can have an ABLE account. So it's important to understand that in order to have an ABLE account, the disability had to have started documented disability prior to age 26. So when it comes to the contributions, we get a lot of questions of who can put money in. Is it only the disabled individual or the parents or grandparents who can put money in? And basically the bottom line is anybody can put money into the ABLE account, but it's limited to the annual gift exclusion, which is currently $15,000. So then comes the next question is, can my child have more than one ABLE account? So you can't have more than one ABLE account. So it is $15,000 a year total annually. And the funds in the ABLE account, in order for the individual to maintain their SSI qualifications, they can't ever exceed $100,000. Okay, so $1 over, 1 penny over, essentially, of $100,000 could cause a person to lose their SSI benefits. Okay. So distributions for qualified expenses, they're not taxable, and earnings on distributions for non-qualified expenses. So basically, in the event that you take money out of an ABLE account for a non-qualified expense, then it would be subject to ordinary income tax as well as a 10% penalty. So we see that in similar situations like an IRA, like if you take money out of an IRA early, you have a 10% penalty. We also see a 10% penalty in a 529C if you take it out for other than college expenses. So that's similar. And as far as the growth is concerned, it's tax-free growth in the investments, and you can change the investment allocation up to twice a year. So one of the questions that we get a lot of times is, what if I already have a 529C? What if I started a 529C for my child and I thought that my child was going to go to college, but maybe they're not going to go to college? What do I do? So a couple of things. For the 529C, and I know I'm kind of switching gears here, but anytime we're doing this meeting, we have families on here that have other children that do not have disabilities. So anytime you have a 529C, the owner of the 529C is the account owner, not the beneficiary. So the 529C, as far as the account owner, is usually the mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whatever. And then the beneficiary of 529C is the college-bound student, right? So in that example, there's two things. If you already have a 529C for your disabled child and your disabled child is not going to go to college, one thing that you can do is, first of all, not worry, because it's not going to jeopardize their SSI benefits on the 529C, because it's based in your name, not the individual's name. Okay. Second of all, you can change the beneficiary in that 529C to another family member in your household that may be going to college. Okay, so that's one thing. And then the third thing that you can do, so again, we're talking about if you have a 529C for your disabled child and you don't think that they're going to college, we can convert the 529C to a 529A at $15,000 a year. So what I would tell you is, don't keep putting money into the 529C for your disabled child, and start converting it sooner versus later to the 529A. You can pay for college out of the 529A for our education or transition services. There's a lot of things education-wise that you can pay for out of an ABLE account for the 529A. But whereas the C, you can only pay for college. Okay. So as far as the 529A, what happens to the money? So if something happens to your disabled child who has a 529A, you do have the ability to roll it over to other eligible family members. Okay. So this is good in scenarios where there are more than one child in the household or more than one person in the household who had a disability that started prior to age 26, but could be problematic if you don't have anybody else in the household that had a disability prior to age 26. Okay, the big key with the 529 is states Texas is able to claim reimbursement for expenses paid by Medicaid. Okay, so what this means is there's a Medicaid payback in the ABLE account. So all of these ABLE accounts have that based off of the state in which you're drawing benefits from. So if the individual with disabilities passes away and there is remaining money in the ABLE account, then the state does have the ability to come in and take reimbursement back for funds that they had paid out from Medicaid. Tracy, do we have any questions just yet? I think we're okay.
We do not have any questions yet.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so qualified expenses for an ABLE account. So basic daily living expenses, health and wellness, healthcare expenses, housing, rent, mortgage. These are all things that an ABLE account can pay for. Financial management, administrative services, transportation, Ubers, etc., public transportation, education and training, employment supports, job coaches, any types of classes to learn new skills. So even though they may not go to college, there's all kinds of other classes and courses and things out there as well. We're talking about assistive technology, personal support services, legal expenses. So we get a lot of questions on why would I have an ABLE account versus a special needs trust, or why might I have both? Okay, so we do see that people sometimes do have both. An ABLE account can get you, so basically you're not going to spend $2,500 to $5,000 to set up an ABLE account. So basically there'll be no cost to set up an ABLE account except for the money that you deposit into the account. Okay, it'll be very low cost versus when you're setting up a trust. You might spend, I don't know, anywhere from say $2,500 to $5,000 to set up a trust. Okay, so when you need an ABLE account, so the magic number for SSI is $2,000. Okay, so if your individual adult child has more or will have more than $2,000 in their name, then we need to have another place to put it to where they are not going to lose their benefits for SSI. And that other place is going to be either an ABLE account or a special needs trust. So as long as their money is under $2,000, and so this is their actual money, all things considered, is under $2,000, you might not necessarily need an ABLE account. You might not necessarily need a trust, but if it's over 2,000 and under 100,000, then you can get by with an ABLE account. And certainly if there's assets, when we're looking at future care, the future care is for a person that might need care for the rest of their life is typically a lot more than $100,000. So that's where these trusts come into play as well. But the key thing on an ABLE account that an ABLE account can pay for that a special needs trust can't pay for is housing and rent. So in my example, in my household, my daughter has both an ABLE account and she has a special needs trust. Now for us, what we choose to do is only put enough money in the ABLE account to cover 1 month rent, right? Because just kind of as a backup. So she basically pays her rent out of her regular checking account. If she were to fall short, then she could pay her rent out of her ABLE account, but you cannot pay rent or mortgage payments out of a special needs trust. Okay, so I'm going to move on. All right, so items that a special needs trust can pay for. So you know, the list that we said about the ABLE account and what it can pay for, basically if it's for the overall health and well-being, roof over their head, etc., for an ABLE account, there's not a whole lot of things that are excluded that an ABLE account can pay for. They can pay, they're least restrictive. A special needs trust can pay for a lot of things as well. But the basic thing, as I mentioned previously, is that it cannot pay for rent, and it cannot pay for mortgage payments. However, a special needs trust can pay for a house outright. Okay, so that is something that it definitively can pay for. Okay, so examples of things that that a special needs trust cannot pay for, we've kind of talked about that. We talked about rent, mortgage payments, real estate, gas and electricity, just basically food and shelter. Okay, so when it comes to SSI is designed to pay for food and shelter. So when we're paying for food and shelter through SSI, the special needs trust is not designed to pay for that. So that's where that goes. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today, we kind of added this, and there's not necessarily a really great guide out there, but we wanted to put these programs out there, and this is not an all-inclusive guide of everything out there, but here are some educational options post high school
Allison,
that's worth considering. Yes.
I'm sorry. We have 2 questions relating to mortgages. Do you want to answer those now or at the end?
Sure.
Okay. Does the mortgage have to be in the child's name? Can parents' mortgage be paid if child lives with them?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it would have to do with their fair share, and I'm gonna have to look that one up and answer that. So basically, a trust, a trust could own a house. So when it comes to SSI, what I can talk to you about on SSI is getting your full amount of $783 a month versus getting $520 or whatever that amount is. Has to do on whether or not your child is A, paying rent, okay, or B, paying their fair share. And the differences of A and B, so paying rent, if they're paying rent to you, then as a parent, so they're living in your house and they're paying you rent, and they're paying whatever they're paying per month, that amount of money would be income on your taxes. So if they're paying you rent, then technically you need to be adding that, putting that on your tax return. If they're paying their fair share, so this is food and shelter, this is the basic utilities, this is the mortgage, and their portion of food, then if you can say that they're paying their fair share, then you do not have to deduct that on your taxes. You don't have to report income on that on your taxes, but they will go from the 520 or 500 something a month SSI benefit to get the full benefit of 783 a month. And in order to advise SSI of that, you just have to show proof. You can send a letter and just say, we're requesting increase, my son's benefit to the full amount as he's now paying his fair share. If you don't have a mortgage, your mortgage is paid off, even better, because it's more likely than he can pay his fair share. If you have 4 or 5 family members in your household, it's the mortgage and basic utilities divided by the number of people in the household is what the number is. Okay. Next question.
How often can you take money from the ABLE account versus taking money from the special needs trust?
So it is more complicated to take money from an ABLE account than it is necessarily to take it from a special needs trust. I don't think that there's limits on how much you can take out on a regular basis. I mean, you can take out what you put in, but what the limits are with the ABLE account is from the point that you take it out and the point that you have proof that you spent it on a qualified expense, and it's within that calendar month, and it's within 30 days. So you wouldn't want to take a large sum of money out of an ABLE account and sit on it and not spend it on a qualified expense with the inside of that 30 days. So there's some little nuances with the ABLE account that you want to, you want to be specific on, and you want to figure those things out. But I don't know that one's necessarily worse than the other. And there are several able accounts that you can have a cash management account tied to, that are like they're an investment. They might be with a mutual fund company or something like that, but you can have a cash management that's relatively accessible. Do we have any other questions?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, perfect. So as it relates to these programs, what I would say is, if you're, depending on where we are at on the age, spectrum here, we have people that have already aged out, or we have people that are kind of looking at things that we're getting closer to 18. There are a lot of programs out there that might be worth checking into, and these are just a few of them. That we know have some decent programs out there that you can check on. Okay, and then we just wanted to put this out there as well, as far as transition and day programs. Post high school, we have several of them out here. We have a lot of them in the area, and it's just of course, the Next Steps Transition Center, this is, obviously what they do. And we just like to put this out there. We like people to understand resources that are available and other programs, just the different things that are available in the area, and just be familiarizing yourself. What we talk about, like Tracy and I talked about today, is like what's a perfect fit for one person might be a non-perfect fit for somebody else. So what we like people to do is really look around and look what's out there and what you're looking for and what's a great fit for your child, and really research those. Some of these programs have waiting lists. Some of them are in, this has been an odd year for everybody with the pandemic by every stretch of the imagination. But the point in saying these things to you is, wherever you're at in your journey, if your kid is 16 or 17 years old and they're still in the school system, and you're thinking about what's next, will they stay in school till they're 20? Will they leave school when they're 18? Start thinking about these things now. Start taking these tours and talking to these facilities, and kind of getting your game plan together. Because even if your child stays in the public school until age 22, not having a path once that's over it's a hard stop. And so we just, we really recommend taking the time to kind of look at some of these programs. A lot of these programs take waivers. They take benefits of the program, and so depending on what your financial needs are, will depend on if some of these programs will work for you or not. Okay. All right, so residential and partial residential options post high school, and we're not assuming anything here. And again, this is not an all-inclusive list, and we're not necessarily promoting or not promoting any one of these facilities. But some of these, again, what we say when it comes to residential, partial residential anyway, really they're day programs. So basically they don't sleep there. Okay? So they're day programs. And so, but looking at these programs and looking at some of the things, and again, what your heart is, and what your interest is, and what might be a good fit for your child, and getting your child on some of these waiting lists. Some of these waiting lists can be really, really long, is going to give yourself an opportunity to say yes or no, right? So it's one thing to want to go there, and you come up on the list, you still have the right to say no. But oftentimes what we're seeing is families that want to go to a particular place, and because the waiting list is long, then they can't get in. So just a thought on that. We wanted to pass that along.
So, I'm sorry, can I interrupt for a minute?
By all means.
You are cutting in and out a little bit, and it sounds like we might have some microphones that aren't muted.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, is that a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So did we have any additional questions? Can you hear me okay?
This is the screen black because the presentation is finished.
Let me see here. It was not showing black on my end.
Tracy?
Yes.
Hi, this is Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
I wanted to know if there were any fees associated. I came in a little late, so I may have missed this. Are there any fees associated with the ABLE accounts? Because my whole issue with not doing the special needs trust is it seems like they're nickeled and dimed to death. And I don't want his accounts dwindled, you know, off of administrative fees and that type of thing.
Sure. Allison, did you hear that question?
So on ABLE accounts is, you know, yes, there are fees. I mean, the fees are going to be similar. It's not nickel and dimed and crazy. I think the fees that you could expect to pay on an ABLE account are those that would be associated with a mutual fund. And usually somewhere between, I would say 5 to 5.75. So you can put $15,000 a year in. Okay. So in generally speaking, I would say somewhere between 5 to 5.75% front end charge. And what that means is that the charges are charged up front, and when you put the money in, and there's no additional charges for taking the money out. It's just a front end charge. So what you see is what you get as far as your account value. So that is a good question. It's not, I don't know of any free ABLE account. I'm not sure of any account out there that is free or there's no charges, but I am knowledgeable of 3 ABLE accounts, ABLE programs that are low cost, that it's not something that people are upset about as far as the fees are concerned.
So you're saying there's no money to withdraw from it, but every time you deposit amounts in, it's a 5 to 5.75% charge
Yes,
based on the amount that you put in.
that's pretty typical.
Okay.
That's a pretty typical charge.
Okay, thank you.
This is Ron Cook. I noticed that you said in the chart something about investments. So do the ABLE accounts invest the money and try to make a return on it?
Yes. So yeah, you can invest it in the ABLE account. You can invest it as high risk or as low risk that you want to, and then you have the ability to change your investments twice a year. But basically, it's a mutual fund chassis. And so it is, I mean, can you put it in a safe account, like to where there's no risk involved at all? You can put it in there, but then you're not going to average, you're not going to really grow the money or anything. It's going to be sitting in like a static savings account. So most of the time what we see that, you know, that people are putting it into an account. What we see most of the time is like, so if a risk profile is 1, which is low risk, or high is a 6, what we see on average from an ABLE account is that people take risk about 3. So moderate or balanced is what we see people. But I actually have seen people take more risk. You know, I have a young lady that's 22 years old, and she wants to take more risk in her account, right? Because she feels like it's, you know, a long time. She has a long time. Her time horizon, so she feels that way. But I would say most people are more on the moderate side of things.
Another question. So, and I hate to get specific. My step grandson that I'm taking care of, I'm thinking of opening an ABLE account for, and occasionally he likes to upgrade his computer. Would the money in the ABLE account be? Can it be used for that?
Absolutely. Anything for the well-being and the enjoyment of the disabled individual. That computer could be used for educational resources. That computer could be used for anything. It could be a car. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, for something as silly as an iPhone or things like that, but yet it absolutely could be used for those types of things.
And do you have a suggestion? I've been going through all of the different able accounts in the different states. I was told like a year and a half ago that Ohio had the better one, but I hear that they're even more online now that's better than the Ohio able account.
Yeah. So for years that was that was the continuing thought that you would hear over and over and over in the special needs community is the Ohio stable able account is the best one out there. And the Ohio stable account is it is a good account. We see so we do see families go with the Ohio stable, and we see a lot of families going with the American Funds and Fidelity. So we see a lot of families going with those as well. We don't you know, from a perspective, Texas has an able account. Texas was kind of late to the party of coming into the fold of able accounts, and while some people do have the Texas able account, and we're not here to rain, here to rain on it, but we definitely do see a lot more people go with the other three that we mentioned.
Well, this American Funds and the Fidelity, that's, as I was looking through all of this, all I could find is listed by state. How do I find these?
So those are things that we can send out offline. I mean, we have, Fidelity's is all online. Okay, so Fidelity's able account is all online, and the American Fund stuff is definitely things that we can send out. The able account, the stable account in Ohio is something that you just go right online and you would set it up yourself through the
Right.
your.
Yeah, I get that now. It's just most of them, they say, well, what state are you in? And they try to steer you towards the state one that you're in. And by the way, the Ohio one has, when somebody's asking about fees, it was relatively small. It was like, if you're out of state, it's $35 or $40 a year just for the maintenance of the fund, but I mean, of the able account. But then, like you say, as you're putting money in and taking money out, that's a different story. And some have credit cards, and some are, ATM type cards, and some don't.
That's why people like the American Funds and the Fidelity one better, because of accessibility. So, and that's why some people say that they don't like the Texas one, right? Is kind of the accessibility of the funds. And I think it's certainly a matter of preference. I think the bigger question is not so much of, which state has the best one. I think that was something that when able accounts came out in 2014, I think that was a very, very, very valid question. Because a lot of them out there weren't good. I don't know that that's as big of a deal now, because there are a lot of good able accounts out there. I think the bigger question is, do you need an able account? What do you intend to use it for? Why do you need it? Making sure that you don't have more than $100,000 in the account, understanding that if you already have a 529C, that you can only transfer $15,000 a year from the 529C to the able account. So if you've got a kid that's 15 years old, you need to get on it sooner versus later. If there's $100,000, a couple $100,000 sitting in there for their college, then starting that transition over to an able account and possibly changing the beneficiary on that particular 529 to another child that will likely go to college is something that I think those are the big takeaways that people need to understand. And the other big takeaway, and I mentioned it several times, and I know that this meeting isn't about SSI or higher learning or any of these other things, but all of those factors matter. So the key is the child under 18? Do we have the money in the right buckets right now to protect their benefit eligibility for when they turn 18? And if we don't, then a deeper, further conversation about that needs to happen sooner versus later before they disqualify. Another key thing that I mentioned on some of my other calls that also really matters and that could really, really mess up SSI is a lot of families that have gone through a divorce, there's child support that is continuing beyond age 18. And in the example of child support continuing beyond age 18, if that child support is not going into a special needs trust or an able account, wherever it can go, right? That child support could cause the child to lose their benefits or lose benefit eligibility. So one thing that I heard, and I hear all kinds of stuff. I mean, I don't have a lot of clients that are kind of going through that, but certainly people have gone through that before. But I did hear from another client recently that said that she didn't realize that, and so she did have child support coming in, and it was going to be extended beyond 18, but she was able to log into that Attorney General website and just simply redirect the child support to the trust, like by changing the routing number and the account number of where child support was going, and simply redirect that money to that first party special needs trust. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there. She was able to do that without an attorney, without a court order, without big expenses, legal expenses, but just be aware of that. And we're not providing legal advice or anything like that. You should have that discussion. If you find yourself in that situation, you can check with the the child support website and see if you can do that. You can check with their hotline, and then you can further check with your attorney on that kind of thing. But I can tell you for sure that once your child turns 18, if child support is coming in, is continuing beyond age 18, it will mess up SSI. There's no question. And I can also tell you for sure that divorce attorneys that are not necessarily specialized in special needs or don't consult an attorney to work with them that's specialized in special needs, they accidentally mess this up. They don't mean to. It's just a matter of not knowing. So I just wanted to, I hope nobody's in that situation, but just in case you are, I wanted to share that information, and I hope that it's helpful.
Another question. On the special needs trust, you say you cannot pay rent or whatever out of that, but you can out of the ABLE account. So can you just move money out of your special needs trust into the ABLE account and then pay the rent with the ABLE account?
That's what we do. So we moved it from the first party trust into the ABLE account, and then it sits there in case she needs to use it to pay.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Is SSI, as far as that goes, my son doesn't get SSI anymore. He gets SSDI.
Uh-huh.
Now, does it work the same way as far as there's no penalties with the SSDI payments as long as it's in an ABLE account?
Well, so SSI is a means-based tested program, and SSDI is a working quarters program. Like, it has to do with the work quarters that that the person has amassed, or if it's under the parents' work quarters. So it's SSI that is means-based and asset-based. So when it comes to SSDI, they're not really looking at these things. It's SSI that they're looking at.
So are you saying I don't need an ABLE account then if he's on SSDI?
You can get by without not having an ABLE account.
So it doesn't matter how much he makes anymore as far as that goes.
No, well, as far as SSDI and how much he makes, yes, he could get kicked off of SSDI for making too much money, and then they would deem him that if he had the ability to make this much money, then maybe he's not disabled after all. Okay. So,
no, I'm sorry. I'm talking as far as I know there's a limit on the monthly amount that he can make, but as far as what he has saved.
As far as his assets, SSDI is not looking at his assets. They're only looking on the limit of how much he can, how much he's making. Okay.
Okay.
Assets, and it is confusing because they throw all these terms around SSI. So Social Security, SSDI, and Social Security disability are all the same. Okay.
Right.
Then you have SSI. Okay. So SSI is means based, which is again 2,000. 2,000 assets to your name if you're an individual, or 3,000 if you're married. You can have one house and one car. So automatically, if a person has two cars, they automatically disqualify from SSI. If they have more than one house, they disqualify. And if they have more than that amount of money that I just mentioned, then they disqualify. So that's the basic difference. And it is confusing. But what I will tell you is we will add your emails to any additional webinars and things that we have. And we do partner with Andy Hardwick with the Social Security Administration. And we also have had some very informative, we have some recordings of some very informative SSI, SSDI Zoom meetings that we've done. So if you're interested in that, I think they are an hour, hour and a half, which sounds intense, but they were really, really good. And people really ask a lot of questions. So if you're interested in that information of the ones that we already had, then we can send you those recordings. And as we have them in the future, then you'll get a notification when we're having them in the future, so you can join in for that as well.
That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How should we provide you our email?
I think if you guys logged in, Meredith, you can maybe chime in on that. But I think that we have that. If you registered for this event, then we'll have your email. But if you're specifically wanting the SSI webinar, so that way you can listen to that, then you'll have to just send us an email, which is on the screen, and then we'll get that to you. And then today's presentation was also recorded, so we'll put that out there to you as well. All right.
That was one of the questions, Allison, and I said that the recording would be available within a couple of days. Will that be emailed out to everyone?
It'll be emailed out to everyone by tomorrow.
Okay.
Either later this afternoon or tomorrow. It'll be available. It usually takes a couple hours once it's over for it to post.
Okay.
I was
We have
forwarded
another
this
question.
by somebody else, so I'm going to send you my email, Tracy, and over the chat.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another question.
Yes.
Can you move money out of the third-party special needs trust to an ABLE account?
Okay, and I don't know the answer to that. I think that the answer is yes, but I would like to verify that. So I know for sure that out of the first party, the answer should be yes. And the reason it should be yes is because it says that the ABLE account can be funded by anyone. So a first party special needs trust is funded by the individual. It is the individual with disabilities money, okay? They either earned it, they got it in a settlement, my daughter gets it in a scholarship. It's money that is directed directly to them. An ABLE account can be funded. It can be funded by anybody. Okay, so it doesn't have to be funded by the individual with the disability. So it should be able to be funded from the third party special needs trust. That is correct. And we've just funded ours with the first party because the third party special needs trust that we have will be funded later, upon our death. It will be funded with life insurance and other assets and things like that. So the first party, and our situation is weird and maybe a little bit backwards, but because of a scholarship, we have first party money coming in. Same thing as if a person has a lawsuit or there's a settlement or a wrongful health thing or something like that, that would be first party money. Okay. Any other questions?
What are Pell Grant leftovers? How do you deal with that?
As far as Pell Grant leftover, what do you mean? Like if they?
Well, the money, it wasn't all spent. In other words, there was a couple $1,000s left over after school, and the Pell Grant was finished. Can that just be slid over into the ABLE account?
It would be an ABLE account, or that would be a first party special needs trust, because that would be in the name of the individual. The refund money would be in the name of the individual, not somebody else, right? And And is it a lot of money? I mean, again, so it's not necessary. You don't have to slide it over anywhere. If it's less than $2,000, you don't necessarily have to slide it anywhere. But again, the Pell Grant money, I mean, that Pell Grant money could, similar to like a scholarship, could be directed to a first party trust as well. So that way it wouldn't be counted. I know the point of it is, so do they just get a refund, I guess is my question, or do they get a large lump sum? So, and this is really probably an offline question because it's very individualized, but if they're getting a large lump sum, and then they pay for their school, and then whatever is left over they keep, then whatever's left over might not be very much, and it might be okay to just leave it in their account, because again, they can have up to $2,000, just under $2,000. I think that's okay. So, I mean, that you know, that's the direction that I would go with that. But I would be very, very careful, because those little scholarships or those little grants, whether it's a Pell Grant or whatever, those little awards that these kids might get could be the very reason why they disqualify from SSI. And I literally was spared by one day of getting the refund from the scholarship redirected to the first party special needs trust. In fact, the school said, oh, it's too late. We've already released the funds. You can't change the account of where it goes to. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to log in and I'm going to try anyway. And I got it done, and I literally got it done, you know, just in time. And she literally would have lost her SSI benefits, but we didn't realize that much of a refund was coming. It was like, oh my gosh, we get the email, and it was shocking. And so it was kind of crazy. But so what I would say is that was very stressful, and we came in, you know, by the skin of our teeth at the last moment and saved the day, and everything went into the trust and everything was fine. But you want to avoid stuff like that happening and the surprises of those grants. Okay. So
I have another question.
okay.
I think there might be some confusion with this. Could SSDI money cause a person to lose Medicaid if they get too much and keep it?
So okay, I'm not sure I even understand the question fully. So SSDI and so SSI, first of all, and Medicaid go together, okay? SSI and Medicaid, okay? So SSI is a means-based program. You have to qualify for it for the level of assets like we talked about. SSDI, once you're approved for SSDI and you have been eligible for 2 years, then you qualify for Medicare. Okay, so once 2 years has elapsed, the person qualifies for Medicare. So in this example, it's SSDI and Medicare, but in some examples, people are dual qualified, and I think somebody said that in the chat box, where they're qualified as perhaps an adult disabled child under the parent's record or under their own record if they have enough work credits, and they qualify for SSI. So in that example, they are considered dual qualified, and then they have both Medicaid and Medicare, and that might even be in addition to your group insurance that you already have in place through your employers. So if your assets are under that threshold, then you definitely could be dual qualified in that example. And then the other thing is on SSDI, where some of these adult disabled children are covered for SSDI, and you're wondering how does that happen? It is kind of the perfect storm of things that happens for your adult disabled child to be covered under SSDI, because people think the word disability means disabled. Well, it only makes sense, right? Well, so then I have families where their child is extremely disabled, and then they get a letter from Social Security disability saying that they don't qualify, and they can't believe it. I mean, I've even had people cry. I mean, they're really upset. But the thing is again, this is not a means-based program. They're not saying that your child isn't disabled. What they are saying is your child doesn't have enough work credits, and neither of his parents are either retired under the Social Security Administration or disabled already under the Social Security Administration. So what I mean is your child can be eligible for 50% of their parents' benefit, their Social Security benefit, 50% of it, if the parent is already disabled or if the parent is already retired. And so many people don't fall into that category right now, but later down the road, as you retire, you will. So while your child may only qualify for SSI now, in the future, when you retire, they will be dual qualified because you did prove that their disability began prior to age 22, which is the magic age with Social Security and the adult disabled child. Then they would indeed be dual qualified. It's very confusing, and it's okay if you don't understand it. You could read it all day long and hear it 100 times. It is still very confusing. And as you kind of come along the way and as you retire or become disabled, then just knowing that these benefits are out there and available for your adult disabled child is important. And also knowing that even if they've never qualified for anything before, because you made too much money, once they turn 18, you go ahead and apply because you want it documented that that child is disabled prior to age 22. That's the key to that. Okay, let's see. We have some good comments in the chat box from some folks that have done this before. So Medicaid will pay for anything that Medicare doesn't pay for, and that's why you want to preserve the Medicaid with the ABLE account. So a lot of people would argue that once they've qualified for SSDI that they don't want to mess with SSI anymore, okay, of all of this income counting, I mean, as far as the asset counting and eligibility and losing benefits and all of those things. So we do have, while some people are dual qualified and they want to stay dual qualified, we also have other families that are really, really sick and tired of all of the different places and things that they have to have money to continue their qualifications under SSI. And some people, once they qualify for SSDI, they don't want to deal with it anymore. And that's okay too. So you do have those options as well. So I know we've talked about a lot of things today. We're kind of, at a wrap up point, but the bottom line is when it comes to having money in the right buckets, you can have the money in an ABLE account. You can have money in a special needs trust. Those are the things that you can have assets for the individual with disabilities that are not going to disqualify them in the future for SSI. So if SSI is in the future, those are things that you need to consider. If you don't think that SSI is ever in the future, or you don't ever plan to go down that highway, then it may not be necessary for you to consider those options. So if we don't have any more questions, Tracy, I think that we'll wrap up for today, and we'll certainly send the slides and the discussion out. And again, anybody who wants the Social Security Administration talk with Andy Hardwick, then let us know, and we can certainly get that out here. But Tracy, thank you for taking the time to have us here today, and I hope this has been helpful for everyone.
Thank you, Allison. And I just want to tell everybody, a lot of people joined very late. So just to be on the lookout for the recording in your email.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. I hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Here, bye-bye.